Motivation.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience.
With DVP. Y'all know who this is. I am the host, DVP. With me, I'm gonna have a couple of special guests, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves after I just give you, my little quick thing. Ladies first, we got Brandy Porter. She's an attorney in the local area. So if y'all getting in trouble or thinking about it, hit her up. She don't take EBT or stamps, so you gotta have cash. And I got my man Bobby Jackson, who he's a conscience. He got me involved in this and got me to paying attention. He asked great questions, and I wanted to have somebody with us who could direct us in the right path. And of course, I got my super producer with me, Roy, who is making sure we get this out to y'all. So, without further ado, I'm gonna let Miss Brandy, the attorney extraordinaire, introduce herself and tell y'all about what she does.
So, good evening. My name is Brandy Porter. Like Darren said, I am a criminal defense attorney as well as a personal injury attorney. Most of my practice is criminal defense, so I spend the majority of my time keeping people out of jail, helping people get through some of the worst days that they have, and really just helping them get their lives back on track, navigating their way through the criminal justice system. And also, I spend a little bit of time advocating with some of the kids of our county and our city, trying to keep them out of trouble, understanding that once you get into it, it's almost impossible to get out. So, my law firm is KDH Law Firm. You can find me on Instagram at KDH Lawyer and on Facebook at KDH Law.
Mr. Jackson.
Greetings, family. My name is Bobby Jackson. I am a native Atlantan, pretty much. Mays High School, class of '90. My wife and I run an independent African-centered high school in the city of Atlanta. Been Thomas Sonic Nyama Preparatory Academy, so TSK Prep for short. And we've been there about 12 years now, helping children, African children, matriculate through the high school system, getting on to college or to work-study programs or anything of that nature. Avid chess fan, chess teacher, love giving kids the game of chess through my program, name of the game, Chess in Real Life, that we do around the city. We've done it with athletes, we've done it with CEOs, we've done it with corporate heads, we've done it with teachers, but I especially love doing it with students and with children. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
All right, and what this is about, like I said, you got Brenda, who's an attorney, me, who's a retired cop, and we got Bobby here. So what we want to do is we want to clear up some of the myths. We want to clear up a lot of the myths and misinformation, and we want to also provide factual information. So if you got questions, comments, just chime in. For those of y'all who are watching on other people's, if you're watching on the tag page, make sure we can see you speak. Come to the page, and we this is what we're gonna do. So we got y'all for at least a good hour. Got questions, comments, or concerns? Feel free to share them up. All right. So, Brandy, you want to do your lawyer thing and let me be my host thing?
Yeah, sure.
You used to taking over.
So there's a lot of misconceptions that are out. A lot of rumors that have been running, especially since the Ahmaud Arbery case came up. There were some really big questions around what it takes to arrest someone. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to clear up was this whole misconception that the police had to call the district attorney, they had to get permission to arrest. Can you shed some light on when you arrive at the scene and someone's been shot, what does that look like from start to arrest?
All right, based on, and I tried to keep up with the case as much as I have. I still got another life, but based on what I know to be truthful so far, once the police got the call that something had happened, that there was a shooting, once they arrived on the scene, which is where the first investigation took place, and this is what I'm not sure of yet. I don't know if it was uniformed officers, which is normally the case, and they call it detective. Uniformed officers probably would not have made an arrest, even though they could have, but based on what the McMichaels initially told them, the uniformed officers probably shouldn't have made an arrest. But once the investigators got involved and they saw the tape, which according to all sources was presented immediately, the arrest should have been made. There's no need to talk to anybody. There's no need to go to the DA. Worst case scenario, the only somebody you're going to ask is your supervisor. Say, hey, this is what we got. This is what I'm doing. Because if they have a murder squad, that's typically what happens. That you go back and you have a group meeting with everybody and say, hey, based on this, what do you guys think? And that's it. Involving the grand jury or the district attorney, and I've reached out to several of my friends because I've been retired about 10 years. Nobody understands that process. I mean, there's no need for them. The grand jury is totally out of the picture. There's a video that they had from all accounts day one. So the process should have been, the investigators got it. They looked at the video. They go out, they make an arrest, and they're locked up, and they should be awaiting trial. And don't get confused. The magistrate has no choice but to give them a zero bond. Magistrates can't give a bond for a murder charge. So that wasn't a win. That was just a matter of law. And they should be sitting there waiting for the courts to open up like everybody else.
So you said when they first got on the scene, based on what the McMichaels said, there shouldn't have been an arrest. In what scenario are there two men with guns and an unarmed dead person and there are no arrests made?
Well, and that was the point, that just based on the way it is, and all you got are the two Zimmerman's testimony. If they say he attacked, because you can't prove how the attack happened, just because I got guns don't mean that people won't attack me. You know, we've seen it happen before. So right now, all you got is they're saying that he was the aggressor. The police, the frontline officers, 9 times out of 10 don't have access to all the other information, and that's what I'm waiting for them to see who saw the original tape. Was it the patrolman or was it the investigators? That will determine how far the neglect went. If the patrolman didn't see it, I gotta take them out of the loop. I can't make them have seen it. I can't make them see everything after the fact. All I got to go on is what they initially saw, and if that's all they got, that's all I can make them have.
Did you say the two Zimmerman's testimony?
Yeah, because when the patrolmen get there, those are the only two who have something to say. What's in question, and I haven't been able to find this out yet, is the third guy. Did he say anything? I haven't seen anything that says he did or did not yet, which causes a dilemma, because if he said something and he was there, he could have been the corroborating witness if he held a tape. Who did he give the tape to and when? That's probably the biggest unknown that I got right now, because they're just saying he turned it over, but to who and when is the question.
Darren, Barbara had the question, why wouldn't the uniformed officers make an arrest? Again,
based on what I'm hearing right now, the uniformed officers were not in a position to make an arrest. We're Monday morning quarterbacking, and under the law, I have to deal with facts. When there's a dead guy and I got two people saying that the dead guy attacked us, that's all I can go with right now. Uniformed officers are not trained to be investigators. They're not trained to look at gunshots and tell angles and look at all that. That's just not their job. Their job is to do what they do and to call investigators. And that's why I say I can't put it on them. And we're not all the same. Brandy's an attorney. Unless the uniformed officer is a DUI task force guy, most of them aren't trained to the level of investigators. They just get baseline stuff. They know a lot about 1,000 things. Where once you become an investigator, you become an expert on one or two things. And patrolmen generally aren't experts on anything.
So I think that what a lot of people have an issue with is that in the world that I live in, if the police show up at your door, somebody is going to jail. Period, point blank. Whether it is, whether there was an argument and I really just want him to leave, but now he's in handcuffs, or they broke in my front door and I fired at them. Now I'm in handcuffs until we finish the investigation. In the world that most of us live in, the police arrest first and investigate second. So I think people are really wanting to know, how are these officers not authorized to do what so many officers are doing, which is arrest first and investigate later?
And that's where we have to look at. And I tell people, the system is what it is. All officers aren't trained the same. Realistically speaking, It's not what most patrolmen do unless it's obvious. And like I said again, there's only two, maybe three people who can testify. If everybody's testifying that Abe Arbery was the aggressor, he doesn't have anything to contradict that. So he can't sit there and make up a narrative based on the facts that he's given at the time that they're there. Like I said, we can see stuff after the fact, but when they call 911, say, hey, we got a guy who tried to attack us, we shot him to defend ourselves, at that point it's questionable. And again, based on what they should be doing, they should be calling an investigator. But at that point, I could say they don't have probable cause to make an arrest, because if you say somebody broke into your house and you shot him, who am I to say he broke into his house or you just opened the door and shot him? I can't make that determination. All I got is what you give me. And if that's what you tell me, that's what I have to put in my report and go from there. We don't like it, but again, we have to stick with, cops have a legal duty to do certain things, and even when they're wrong, we can't make it right by other situations. And even if we perceive something to be the norm, they still don't make it right, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
You're being real nice about this, man.
well, and Bobby, I promise you I'm not, because I'm not trying, and that's why when I made the post and I said there were officers who don't need to be suspended or demoted, they need to be jailed, but until we find out their level of knowledge, we can't just arbitrarily say, okay, we know for a fact that the DA needs to be jailed. The GA is a co-conspirator.
Right.
The judge is a co-conspirator, but how far up the chain or how low does it go? Did the captain know? Did the sergeant know? Where did that? Who had that tape? Without that knowledge, Bobby, we're reaching at straws, and then we're becoming like we don't want people to do to us. We're just grouping everybody together. Because
but the reason I said you're being nice though, D, is because you're playing it from a very humanistic point of view. Yeah, by the letter of the law, you're right. But we all know, as the attorney, Sister Brandy was saying, that in our world, we don't get that privilege, and I'll use that word, for the letter of the law. Cops get called, somebody getting locked up. Now, whether you go to jail that night or not, you're going to be sitting on that curb or in the back of that patrol car until they figure things out. But of course, when you are dealing with a system that everybody knows everybody, judges play golf with these particular DAs, and this sheriff knows this deputy, and such knows this investigator. I mean, yeah, rules get moved from the letter to the spirit of the law, and they start doing things a little murky. And I really think from just a general public point of view, because I'm not a law enforcement officer, I'm not an attorney, I'm just a black man in the city of Atlanta, Georgia, who's seen way too much from that side of the bench, if you will, that says, we're not going to get a fair shake on none of this. And when you got the lowest of the hillbilly hicks that can get a fair shake on something, and we can't, it makes brothers and sisters like myself kind of look at this thing sideways. So you're being real nice. I salute you.
And this is kind of where when Brandy asked me about this, and it's really not being nice. It's just telling you, because Brandy could tell you there are times when cops don't make arrests and people are frustrated, but the cops just don't have enough. There are lots of DV incidences where cops were not making an arrest. Unfortunately, those incidents a lot of times weren't happening with our community, but they happen a lot, which is why the law was enforced now that when cops go to a DV call, something has to be done. You can't just tell them, hey, y'all need to stop and I can't come back. The law changed. Somebody's got to leave. So cops are forced to do something now when there's a DV call. This wasn't a DV call. And that's why I say, when you got the good cop, there's just certain things they cannot do because they say, this says this. I believe this, but can I prove it? So even if the cops thought they committed murder, and we're talking strictly patrolmen right now, what would they arrest based on? Because they were told, what we were told is that they were attacked, or that one was attacked, the other one was help defending them, which is what kind of the self-defense law says, that you can help defend the third person. So if they were truthful in their testimony, everything would have been right. Absent a video, this would never be a question, because there's no way we could prove what happened absent that video.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how we get to the video. So the 911 call, essentially, I guess it's the third party says, or someone says, that there's been a string of burglaries. We thought this guy was the person breaking into houses. We had seen him on a construction site. So let's talk about a citizen's arrest. Under the rules of a citizen's arrest, what has to occur in order for a citizen to be able to make an arrest?
Under the law, for a citizen's arrest to be legitimate, the citizen has to see the crime or either have immediate knowledge. And y'all know what seeing the crime means. I see you doing this. Immediate knowledge is, I know Brandy. I know Bobby. If Brandy calls me and say, hey, I just saw Bobby breaking in my house and run out. So when I come 15 minutes later, because I know Bobby, I can still arrest Bobby. That's my immediate knowledge. But if Brandy just says some black guy broke in, I can't just arrest black guys in general because I never saw them and all I'm getting is a random thing. So, because I was explaining immediate knowledge to people. But other than that, and the law is clear, they cannot use deadly force unless deadly force is brought to them first. It won't allow you. Let's just for argument's sake say he did commit a crime, and I'm willing to say he committed a bogus crime, which was trespassing.
I disagree.
No, I'm saying let's just give him that one because we know he was on the property, right?
Right.
So let's just say he was there without permission. So the best we can get him for is trespassing. That is the very best. Trespassing is a misdemeanor. I don't care how you do it. And there are rules to that they couldn't even prove that. But that was the best crime they could have got him for. You will not arrest for trespassing because trespassing has one cute little statute in it. The person has to know that they can't come on the property. The property owner doesn't have any no trespassing signs. He doesn't have any keep out signs. There's nothing to say that people can't come. So even had they thought this, which is BS, and this is where policemen and detectives differ. Policemen generally won't ask 911, have we had burglar calls in the past, and do that type of investigation. That's just not what they're there for. Patrolmen are there to get something done. They got 15 to 20 minutes because they got to get to other calls. Investigators can do one case at a time or two, but they got time to do it. And this is where once you check the information, which is why I'm extra hard on whoever was the investigator, you get to look at the 911 calls. You get to see how many burglars were in the area. You get to do all this. This is part of your case file. They don't have a legitimate excuse for why they didn't do something. There's no way I can excuse them from the process. Even if they were told by their superiors not to, the law doesn't allow that.
Okay, so let me ask this and let me also put this caveat. The one thing that you didn't mention about the citizen's arrest is you can only arrest someone if you have knowledge or immediate knowledge that they have committed a felony. Not that they have committed a crime, but that they've specifically committed a felony. Now, robbery would have fallen under that statute if they saw him and thought that he was committing a robbery. Based on the information that's out there right now, he was on an unfinished construction site. So, as you say, best we can get him on is criminal trespass.
Right.
So police officers get there, and the story is we were trying to make a citizen's arrest because we thought we saw him on this construction site, and so we thought he was the person that's been committing these robberies that don't exist. But we thought he was the person that's been committing these robberies. So we attempted to make a citizen's arrest. He attacked us. We killed him.
Right.
Does the fact that you instigated the situation with the bogus citizen's arrest not give you enough probable cause to arrest them on the scene?
Well, and I was trying to look up, see the ones I saw, like when I knew when I was a cop, it specifically said it specifically said at one point you could make citizen's arrest only for felonies. Then at one point you could make them for shoplifting. So the statute dropped. The one I looked up recently has no distinction. It just says you have to have either see the crime or have immediate knowledge of it. And that's why I didn't bring up the felony, because when I tried to look up the code section I couldn't see that. And I put the code section for the citizen's arrest. But again, I don't have the newest books anymore. I used to have them. So I intentionally left that part out because I couldn't swear to it. But I knew it used to be felony, which makes no sense because felons, even for cops to do a felony arrest, most agents say it's got to be 2. So I don't know why you would let citizens make citizens arrest felons. That makes even less sense. But again, you got to remember, and we have to, for clarity's sake, we have to differentiate between the patrolman and the investigator. The patrolman can only go by what they're told. They don't have time to go back and They don't have time to go back and check cameras, check 911 calls, call homeowners, and do all that. That's just not what they do. That's why even the weird TV shows, that's why you call the detectives. That's what their job is. When you don't have a clear-cut something, or when there's a murder in this case, no murder should ever be handled by a patrolman. Even if it's open and shut, the patrolman will 99% of the time call an investigator and let them do everything. It's just easier, and I get my hands clean. So as soon as you see the murder, the first thing you do is you get on the radio and say, radio star, somebody from the murder squad. And you tell them why, and that's kind of where SVU is true. Once they come out, you kind of wash your hand, because they're just not equipped to make that, and you don't want to make rash decisions and mess up the case. So I can excuse the patrolman to a fault, to a sense. I just don't know what they knew so that I can hold them accountable.
Okay, so let me ask this. I had a client who struck someone, hit someone in this vehicle. Mm-hmm. He immediately stops. He calls 911. Police come out. The young man dies, that was hit, dies. So they call an investigator out. My guy is still on the scene this entire time until the investigator gets there.
Right.
So the investigator comes out, talks to the patrol, asks my guy what happens. My guy is then taken to the station for questioning, and he's immediately arrested as soon as the questioning is done. So if what you're saying is that the initial patrolman on the scene would not have had the ability, for whatever reasons, training, etc., to make the arrest, is it not standard protocol that the persons that are involved are there on the scene until the investigators get there and make a decision? So are we saying investigators got there and made a decision and these people still have to leave?
Well, and see, that's where that big gray door is that nobody knows what's behind it. Did the investigators come and take these guys to the station and question them? See, that part I haven't found any information on yet, and that's kind of what I need, so I know where to start truly blaming the accountable people. Because, like you said, that's what should have happened. Once they got there, the investigator should have took them down and interviewed them both and had all of this on tape. What was said in the interview, and that's what he made his determination off of. So if when I'm interviewing these people and they telling me what's happened, if they telling me what's happening, if their stories corroborate each other, again, absent the tape, I only got 2 witnesses, and maybe this third guy. But if everybody's saying that that Ahmad did the attacking, that's all I got. Whether I believe it or not, it doesn't matter what I believe. What can I prove? If I got 3 people saying he was the aggressor, he started the attacking, we only wanted to talk to him, I feel like they lying. And this is where there are times when, as an investigator, you got to let people go until you get more information. And this is why it's important. When did that tape come in? The tape clearly shows something different. This is when, as an investigator, I go back and listen to the 911 call. And let's just say, because I forgot the time, but let's just say the call came in at 5 o'clock. I want all the calls that came in before that day. You can go to 911 and say, hey, I need all the criminal trespass, all the burglary calls that you got in this neighborhood. They can give you that within 30 minutes. And then I look back to see if what 911 has, because they're a neutral source and they're trusted by the courts. And if it corroborates, then fine. Close case exceptionally, because this is what happened. If it's not, then I go back and I do my report, and then I take out an arrest warrant. So I only need a magistrate judge to sign. So and that's why, it's not that I'm being polite, Bobby. It's just that I know how the system should work, and the patrolmen right now are the innocent kids on the block, because they don't have the basis to do what most people think. It's not like TV.
Key word in that is should work, and that's the funny. You said that gray door that is behind is the gray door or the white hood that is under, because what you have is with these investigators or with these patrolmen or what have you. Like I said, this is South Georgia we're talking about, and it could be south side of Chicago, to be honest with you. But that good old boy network runs vein to vein from DA down to patrolman. So they get the benefit of the doubt or the complexion for the protection, if you will, that we don't get. It's just that simple. I hear what you're saying, dude, and I understand that you're coming at it from a very a legalistic, let's find the facts point of view. That's the way it should work. But we've all seen the picture of Justice, is blind, with her pulling up the one side of the blindfold. Because she peeks through when she wants to peek through for who she wants to peek through for. And it seems like we're always on the short end of that stick.
And let me give you a for instance. One of the cases that I testified in with the GBI was strictly us. I went through every chain of command to try to tell them we have a crooked officer in our midst. I was asked by a department head, how do you know? I gave them my information. I had factual data from 3 other agencies that said this person is totally crooked. I was told to let it go. This is by us, and this is why I don't always argue people when they say blue protects blue. I don't think it's that. It's familiarity and who you know. But even when I was told to let it go, I made a call to the GBI and I just sent them my case file because what I had was concrete. And when the arrest came, the first person they came after was me, and I was like, why didn't you say something? And I was like, see all these emails I got? I told you that this officer was crooked. You said that she was your friend and she would never do this. And I told you she lied to you. You told me to stay in my pay grade. So as an investigator, and the law says if I know something, if I don't do something, I can go to jail. I'm not going to jail. I forwarded it to the GBI. When they called me, they asked me if I had anything else. I gave them a list of names and phone numbers. So, and I'm just saying that say, what we see a lot of times is us being drugged. But once you're inside, and that's why I tell people, sometimes good officers don't know when something goes wrong. But it's not just them. And that's not to make light of this, because I can't honestly say whether or not I believe this is race related or whether this is people related, because this whole circle of people are just crappy people. And until when they start going into Zimmerman's old cases, this will give us a clue. Did he do this to everybody? I don't know if you guys remember there was a guy who used to have a
Darren, you keep saying,
who used to have a drill.
Darren, you keep saying, let's get this right.
He used to stop and do traffic stops for drugs. Best guy at it, but he was violating rights. He was violating everybody's rights. It wasn't racial. He did it to anybody. But the people who complained were black, and everybody made it a black issue at first. And part of the reason he got off is because it wasn't racial. He was just a shitty cop. And so before I start throwing things out there, I do like to have a little bit better information because people trust me as a source, even if they think I'm pro-police. What I am is just, I want the system to be right. And I'm going to use Brandy right quick, if you don't mind, Brandy. When Brandy called me about an incident one time, I told her how to prove the officer was wrong because that's what I've been called on. It's not my job, but Brandy has to give me enough information where I can challenge what he did. If you just ask me what I think, I can't. What I think, nobody cares. What can you give me? Brandy said a couple of things to me, and as soon as she said them, I was like, Brandy, this is where you got to stick with. Don't go here, go over there. Just go with this, because they're going to try to take you here across the street. But stay right here and stay in that lane, because that's where the error occurred. And with this, the 911 call tape is important. The interview tape is probably the most important thing, because we can find out what was said exactly and when that tape came in.
So 2 things for you, D.
Yes, sir.
One, I'm loving the Freudian slip that you keep calling him the Zimmerman.
Oh shit! My bad, McMichael.
you know they all look alike. All right.
Hey!
My bad. But part 2 of that, in the example that you gave with the shitty cop, the racism isn't just in the act of what he was doing to people. The racism is in the fact that he didn't get prosecuted for it. It expands just beyond the act of. When you have black people and people of color who are going to be on the short end of the stick most of the time, whether it's drug charges or DUIs or just walking down the street, thank you, New York, stop and frisk, generally you're going to see that happen and we're going to catch it. Right. For me, the racism part is bigger than just that. That's a part of it. But when these guys walk free because they are Tony Gucciotti or of this particular Italian family that's been down this line, or that blue code with all these dudes with the white skin. And yeah, there's certainly a blue code, whether you black skinned or white skinned or what have you. But ultimately, the system, and that's what we're talking racism is. I need us to be real clear about that. Whenever you hear that ISM, that ism on the end of something, you got to think systemically. What you were doing and what you had happen, isolated incident, one person, you said it was us doing us. That happens, but that's not an ism. That's not a systematic approach to devaluing somebody or devaluing a group of people simply based on their skin tone or their racial or ethnic makeup. That's where this whole thing has hit. So when you're looking at Brunswick, Georgia right now, and was that Glenn County was the police force down there that was dealing with this? Right. You have to look at this thing systemically. There is a pervasive system that runs through many a police force. I damn sure close to say all of them, that says if you are a person of color and if you are a person at a particular income level, you're going to catch it. And like one of my elders used to state, that if you want to talk it from a level of class, we'll give you race for free. It just comes with the package. So that's my hit on that. Racism is all over this thing. I can't even look the other way on it.
But what I really want us to do, and I'm never gonna knock the racism part, but we have to attack one case at a time. When we keep grouping them, we lose focus on what it is. Which is why when I made the post, I listed things specifically just to this, because every time somebody asks me about one, I try to attack just the case they're talking about and not talk about everything else, because then we become divided and distracted. I only want to deal with the Brunswick stuff. I only want to deal with the officers in different levels. Like I say, when you see the post, I specifically called out the DA. I specifically called out the judge. Does it happen in other places? Yes, but I don't want us to get into all of that right now, because we have to finish one out to get what we want. Which is one of the reasons I said to people, stop saying we won't be surprised, because once you say that, potential jurors can say like, well, if we don't do a conviction, they won't be that upset. We got to quit saying things because we believe a system is there. We're telling them, hey, it's okay to kill us. We're going to get mad over it and have another kumbaya moment. And we have got to stop that. And Brandy, and I asked some other attorneys, let's make sure that we charge appropriately and correctly and not emotionally. And
I agree.
Through my Freudian slips, that was partly what happened to Zimmerman. He was charged inappropriately, but we were happy that he got the charge, but it was never going to stick. And we have to be more focused. We have to have people like Brandy. We have to have people like Bobby. We have to have true civil rights and activists who tell us, hey, we can't prove murder by the code of the law, but this is what we can prove, and this is what we can get done. If we charge based on your emotion, we're going to lose again, and we're going to say the system is against us, when it's not. It's our voting habits. And that's why I try to educate people on what the law actually says versus how we feel about it. And we can't get caught up in that. Semantics is important when we do this. Brandon can tell you that what you say is what you'll be held accountable for.
No, it ain't. It's not. But I'm gonna let Brandy go ahead.
Okay, so I agree with both of you. I agree that this is systemic racism. This is literally what systemic racism looks like, feels like, sounds like, tastes like, and I'm gonna explain why. But I also agree that it's not completely just racism. It is a portion of who do you know and how well do you know them. So systemic racism, it starts off being, I saw a black guy run into a house, so I chased him down. Whatever happened after I chased him down, I shot him. He died in the middle of the street. We called the police came, they did whatever the police did, and the police called and spoke to somebody who they knew, who knew me, who called and talked to a DA who knew me, who called and talked to a judge who knew me, and they all said, go home. If I had shot and killed a predominant white somebody's son, who was going to go up into the judge and into the Senate's office and into the councilman's office and raise holy hell because I killed a white guy or girl, then the judges and the DAs who said it was okay not to arrest me would not have said it was okay not to arrest me. So that's where the systemic racism is. You shot and killed a young black man, and they were willing to sweep it under the rug because young black men don't mean anything. Because he's just another nigga out here in the street who either was doing something bad or was getting ready to do something bad. And absolutely, let's go and pull his record from when he was 15 years old and he caught that one charge when he was 15 years old. And then let's also put on the news that he had a probation violation and he served time in jail. We won't tell anybody that when he served time in jail, the officer who shot and killed him is the same officer who investigated and had him put in jail. We won't tell people that. That's systemic racism. That's where a young black man who doesn't mean anything can be pushed up under the rug and shot dead and killed in the streets. But it's also who you know. Because if I know the sheriff and the sheriff knows the DA and I play golf with the judge, then I am guaranteed that I'm going to go home because who I know is going to protect me as much as my white skin and my privilege and his black skin and the lack of his value in this country and in my community.
Right, and that's why whenever we talk, I cannot get around the importance of that tape. That tape determines everything. The more people that knew about that tape, the more we know where the cover up is. Because right now we do know that two people, and those are on.
I got two words for you, dude. I got 2 words for you. Rodney King. Tapes don't mean shit.
Yes, they do. And let me interrupt for a second. Rodney King is the best example. Guess who didn't go to jail in that Rodney King incident? The one white lady who called somebody. It's not her job to stand there and get beat, but she made a reference that it was going on. That one white cop, the lady, is the only one who didn't get prison time simply because she notified a supervisor that they were out there doing something.
Time.
Say it again.
None of them actually served any prison.
Nobody got prison time in Rodney King.
I mean, she was immediately exonerated because she did what she was supposed to do. She walked up on it. She couldn't do nothing about that. And that one guy what's the one guy who wrote a book? I thought he did prison time.
We had an entire tape. We had an entire tape of cats getting beat on. This dude getting beat on for 4 or 5 straight minutes, right. And nobody went to jail. Nobody.
And I know you ain't gonna like this, and I know you ain't gonna like it. His was just a tad bit different.
Oh, okay. Please explain this one for me.
Not saying that they shouldn't have went, and understand we gotta remember where they are, what they're, and I don't agree with what was going on. But if I'm looking purely from what is taught, purely from what we teach, when you have a suspect who won't listen to commands, there are certain things that you are allowed to do. I ain't saying it's right, I ain't saying it's wrong, but when you make determinations, the cases I've been on, the first thing I do when I go to a police department is look at their departmental policies. I have to look at what their use of force says. Our policy says, used to say, if I ask you to do something and you don't, I can tase you. You don't have to do nothing violent other than resist my command. And you have to look at what each department allows, which is why I'm so big on citizen review boards, so these policies can be looked at. Because there are policies that allow a lot of things to happen that may not be right, but they've been approved. And so you have to go there, which is why I keep telling people, it ain't the line officers you got to look at sometimes. You have to look at the people that set up these policies that allow this to go. Because you can fire me. You can fire me all day, every day, and do whatever. But if you leave the sheriff there, you leave the captains and lieutenants who are enforcing these policies, the system ain't never changed. I'm replaceable. And that's why I took my time to make that post. We have to start attacking at the top. The people that we vote for, we have to start attacking them. Because if we don't attack them, we're saying, hey, slap Bobby for being wrong. Slap Bobby's kids for being wrong, but let's let Bobby have more kids and teach them wrong. We have to go in those orders. And like I say, when I come on and talk and people say, oh, you pro this, I've read a lot of policies, and some of them are detestable, but these attorneys never challenge them. Your civil rights activists who go in, they never challenge them. Truth be said, y'all like me, but at the end of the day, who am I? I'm just a guy. When you got these attorneys who go in and say, oh, we're going to fight for justice, we're going to do this, and I use Florida for an example. After the Trayvon Martin shooting, when was there ever any talk of changing the law? When was there ever any talk of anything?
There was never any reason to change the law. The law makes perfectly good sense. We have the exact same law in Georgia. No one's going in to change the stand your ground law. The problem was never in the law with the Trayvon Martin case. The problem was in the DA's office. The problem was that the DA didn't want to charge the case, and so the DA intentionally overcharged the case, and even when they had the opportunity to come back and ask for a lesser included, they didn't. The DA knew they were going to win the case when they walked in. Like you said earlier, you can't win on a murder charge. If this DA, I'm telling you now, if this DA charges these people with murder, just go ahead and send them home. You cannot win on a murder charge here. It's not murder in Georgia. It's not murder in Florida. This is a felony murder case with an underlying aggravated assault with both the guns and the trucks on both, probably all 3 of the people.
Yeah, because you can hear a gun, and as you see, because I even changed it, it's aggravated assault, it's kidnapping, because based on what they said is they tried to stop him 2 times before, so they were trying to impede his movement. And the kidnapping and the aggravated assault charges are super important to me, because I want to get to the felony murder, the malice murder, and the murder. And because I think murder is easy to prove based on their testimony. You kept trying to stop this guy, and let's just say again, for shits and giggles, he was a burglar. Okay, he's running down the street with pants on. Where is the TV he stole? Where is anything that he stole? Because that's generally what thieves do, is they steal something. So if he stole 12 gulps of air, there should have been something there. Other than that, it was a hunting, plain and simple, which is why murder is so easy a charge, because there was nothing that predicated them having firearms. And when
you're not going to win a murder case,
I don't see how you cannot win.
You're not going to win a straight murder case, an intent murder case. No. As you're not going to win that. I'm going to argue till I am blue in my face that my intent was to stop him and to question him and to hold him until the police came. And then he charged at me, and I had no choice but to shoot at him. And as an attorney, I'm going to win a murder case hands down, with one hand tied behind my back, standing in 10-inch heels and 1 foot balanced on a pinky toe. You're not going to win a murder case.
But see, Brandon, you left out 2 important facts. If that was the only thing you had, I would be in total agreement with you. The fact that they said they tried to stop him 2 times prior, it shows predication, because now you're a predator. Because if you had the wherewithal to stop him 2 times before, you know what you also had the time to do? You had the time to call 911. 911 was never called until
Zimmerman called 911, was told by 911, do not follow this person, stay in your car, we're on our way. He got out of his car, he approached Trayvon, he grabbed him by the arm. When they wrestled, he then was losing the fight, and he pulled out a gun and shot him in self-defense, because I am losing a fight that I started. You're going to lose on a murder charge.
And again, based on what I've done, that would be my charge, and I would stick with it because of all the predicate information. There's no way as a cop, yes, I'm supposed to have a gun.
She just gave you the full layout of exactly what you defined. When you have the Zimmerman and Trayvon case, everything that you just said, everything, the 911, he had time, he was told not to, he got off. Period.
Again,
because they charged him with murder.
But Bobby, you did
intent.
You did the same thing she did. You left out the prior 2 stops, and those are what make it predatory. Yeah, it does, because you cannot. Because
think about this.
Predatory behavior.
When Zimmerman yells out to Trayvon, "Hey, stop!" and Trayvon keeps walking, and then Zimmerman continues to follow him, and he walks up and he grabs Trayvon's arm and says, "What are you doing here?" and they begin to tussle. It's the same concept. You still don't have an intent. Zimmerman's intent, according to his attorneys, was never to harm Trayvon. It was to find out why he was in that neighborhood and to protect his neighborhood, because there had been burglars, and I wanted to make sure that this young black kid who looked suspicious wasn't doing anything. These white guys have said consistently, I thought he was breaking and doing robberies. I attempted to stop him because I was trying to do a citizen's arrest. I attempted to stop him because I was trying to do a citizen's arrest. He lunged at me. I shot him. The intent that they have given you every single step of the way has been, I wanted to stop him and do a citizen's arrest. As a matter of fact, they had an attorney friend come out and say they never intended to harm him, and if he'd have just followed their directions and stopped, he would have never gotten shot.
So you're right. Let me jump in. I got you, Roy. Okay. And again, what we don't want to acknowledge is something I argue with people from out of state. Georgia is pretty good on convicting cops. Other people, you got to remember, we've had plenty of cops go to jail for doing the wrong thing. Whether it was the Neal Street Boys, whether it was the DeKalb County, Georgia ain't like Florida in some instances. There is a system in place where things happen, and that's why I say I stick to the 2 prior times, because in those 2 times they should have called. There's no reason, because as a private citizen, Bobby cannot stop me and demand that I talk to him. He doesn't have that authority. The citizen's arrest does not allow you to interview or interrogate me. It allows you to arrest me. So if you are going to arrest me and that's what you said. The first time you should have done it. The second time you call somebody, and these are the important points. You call somebody, which is what this third guy said. He is filming this whole event. None of that is spontaneous. If there's a spontaneous action, like I said, had there not been a tape, a lot of this is so unarguable, even as an investigator. But once I show that you are, as somebody pointed out, you are hunting this man, you are following him around. If he passed you 3 times, you had the chance to see what he had every single time.
I am following him.
TV, you would have saw the radio. Hell, you would have saw a piece of plywood if that's what he was stealing. So from a factual basis, and that's all I'm dealing with right now, because Georgia, as much as we want to say it's so backwards, we got more cop conviction than most other places with less, because there is still a standard. But I have to take my time and prove every little step and make it a weakness, which is why I keep starting with the
Here's how you.
Hold on, Roy want to take a break.
No, I don't want to take a break. I want to say something because y'all, I had been off camera quiet because, as you said, I was with that BS. I was gonna get in here, but you guys are, and I think Brandy made the point, and this is where the issue is gonna come in now. The whole thing with Trayvon was not in what he did. It was in the sentencing. It was in the charging that they did. Trying to prove in Florida, and I think, Darren, you told me that they don't have the distinctions like we do in Florida, which is murder 1, murder 2, manslaughter, stuff like that. So I don't know that they do that here in Georgia.
No.
So because of that, that's what changes it. When they charged him with murder 1, and I said this, I made 2 statements to it. One, the DA was dead wrong. Because you're absolutely right, Brandon. They knew that there was no way that they were going to prove murder 1, because it's very rare that you are able to prove murder 1 when the victim and the suspect didn't know each other. So there's no premeditation of that, and that's the whole thing with that. They need to charge, if nothing else, with all the facts. Like, see, Darren is saying stuff that people don't want to hear. They don't want to hear the fact that these different things could happen that way. And we can't get too emotional again to the point where you're talking about, let's charge them with the highest standard. Because again, and Brandy, we did the show Saturday. I said this. I said, listen, I went through college wanting to be a lawyer. I spent a lot of time reading law books, talking to different lawyers. And I said, if you ask any lawyer, they will tell you from the very beginning, in a court of law, it's not what is right. It's not what is true. It's what you can prove. And if you sit there and say, and I get, Darren, I get what you're saying as far as the aspects of it, but there's too much, because again, it's I know that in some cases that there are 2 different standards that you're usually dealing with. One is reasonable doubt. The other one is a preponderance of the evidence. And so when you're dealing with that, there's going to be reasonable doubt. You can't tell me, even if they come to Cobb County with this and bring this trial up here, and you get these different people, when they see the stuff, there's going to be, somebody's going to have reasonable doubt that they didn't intend to kill him. Although most of us feel that that's what they did. They were, like you said, I am of the mindset that they did hunt that young man, and that they went after him for that. But it's still, what are you going to be able to prove? They can prove manslaughter. Manslaughter is not, because whatever you want to call it, he ended up dead for something that you did, that you ultimately, as they get deeper into the law, like you said, they didn't have the right to do. They didn't have the right to it. So, to make the citizens arrest and all that stuff. So go ahead, Brandy. I'm sorry.
Let me interrupt you one more time. And what we're skipping is McMichael. Remember, I told you before, even though I'm retired, I'm still held to a certain standard because I've been trained to do something. So Zimmerman can't even say he didn't know the standard because of who he was and what he did. See, that in and of itself, he was a retired cop. He was a retired investigator. So he couldn't even claim he doesn't know the law. I can't shoot somebody for simply entering into my house. Even though I've been trained and I've been retired for 2 years, I can never shoot somebody simply because I'm scared. Brandy can. Brandy can use that as her total defense. As a cop, I still got it as a retired cop. That training doesn't leave me.
There's no way I'm going to let you get away with that statement, because every cop that guns down a kid out here, what's their first statement? I feared for my life.
And And what do I tell you? In training, Brandy knows this, you cannot even use that statement to use force. There are 3 things that are required by law. So whenever an attorney lets that happen, that's the attorney's issue. And that's why I keep going back. We have to attack the people who are telling us they mean us well. Because they don't. They let things go to get paid or whatever. But as soon as the cop said he was in fear for his life, nobody cares. Bobby, every stop I made, guess what? I was scared because I didn't know what I was going into. Doesn't mean I could shoot people. I still got to meet a standard.
That's you.
No, that's a standard. It's a standard, Bobby. If you don't present a gun or a weapon, I can't just shoot you because I'm scared. Bobby, I arrested a guy who was a boxer. He was 6'7", 300+ pounds. When he stood up, Bobby, he blocked everything I knew as bad as I wanted to because his paperwork said he was violent. Until he did something, I couldn't even break out a weapon.
And what was Oscar Grant's weapon? As Oscar Grant sat at Fruitville Station, handcuffed on the side of the subway track, and this white cop pulls his taser on him. First of all, he was handcuffed. What was the fear? His fear was his black skin. That was the fear. You are automatically weaponized as a black person in this country. Period. The moment a cop see that skin, you're a threat.
And again, the people who we depend on to defend us, we have to hold them to a higher standard. When Brandy is attorney and Brandy wants to do something, we have to hold Brandy to a higher standard if she's going to speak for us. Because if you believe my system is corrupt, and right now I'm going to take ownership of all cops, good, bad, or indifferent. When Brandy comes to defend, Brandy has attacked the system to show you where it's wrong. She can't just sit back and take whatever they give her.
So I want to steer us back on track, back to where we were just a little bit.
Go ahead.
So Roy had a couple of interesting thoughts as far as making sure that we're using the right words and that we're charging people correctly. So there's 2 standards that I think are attempting to be applied here. There's a murder charge, and then there's a felony murder charge. So for people that are watching us, I just want to explain the difference. An actual murder charge or murder 1 charge, which is not a real thing in Georgia, but that's how most people know it. To be charged with, it's malice murder in Georgia, you have to have an intent to kill someone, a specific person, and then you have in fact killed that specific person. The issue and where everyone is getting tied up at is the intent portion. How do you prove intent? So Darren says, once they stopped this guy 2 different times, that showed intent that they were hunting him as opposed to attempting to citizens arrest him. And then Darren says, throwing to the fact that we brought in, we called somebody and said, yo, come and join us. That further leads into an intent to murder. As a defense attorney, when I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, oh, you called somebody? Oh, okay, so yeah, he called his buddy because he had tried to stop this young man on at least 1 occasion. The young man refused to stop. So he calls his buddy and he says, hey, I need you to videotape me arresting this guy because I don't want there to be any questions about what happened later. I still only intend to arrest him. And you're taping specifically for my safety and to cover my actions. That's reasonable doubt. Could that have been what you were doing? Absolutely. Could you have been hunting this young man? Absolutely. Anytime there's a situation where a juror could think that you could have been doing 1 or 2 different things, that's reasonable doubt. My question to you is, why take the risk?
It's not reasonable doubt because this is where we have to, again, speaking. When this third dude, I forgot his name, the one with the Boris Johnson haircut, if you got time to call him, and this is where the plot thickens. I got time to call Bobby to tell Bobby to come to my house. Well, 911 is much easier to dial than Bobby. That was never there. So
if I'm his attorney, if I'm McMichael's attorney, my reasoning is, yes, I could have called 911. I was going to call 911, but I am a retired officer. I have the ability and the knowledge. I am still held to the standard that if something pops off in front of me, I'm going to respond as a police officer. So that's what I did. And even though I understand what you're saying, it makes much more sense to charge as a felony murder, and where the standard is completely different. Roy is right. There are different standards. When we're talking about felony murder versus malice murder, we're talking about, did you commit a violent or a dangerous felony? And during the course of that felony, was someone killed? The great thing, or the bad thing, depending on who you ask, about felony murder is you don't have to do a lot. You don't even have to be the person who pulled the trigger. If you were there and somebody got killed, you can be found guilty of felony murder. So when we're talking about aggravated assault, it only takes one charge of aggravated assault to stick. And as you and I both know, when we're talking about aggravated assault with a gun, all it takes to prove aggravated assault is that you did in fact have a weapon. I knew you had that weapon, and that weapon put me in fear that you might cause me bodily harm. So when these 2-3 men pulled up on this young man for the second or third time and pulled out weapons, hopped out their truck, jumped in front of him with a shotgun in his hand. Did he see the shotgun? We know he did because he had time to grab it. Did he fear the shotgun? I've yet to find a shotgun that didn't scare me. Did he fear that he was going to be placed in immediate danger? I've yet to see a shotgun that didn't make me think I might get shot by it. You now have aggravated assault. And somebody died as a result of that felonious aggravated assault. You now have felony murder. You don't have to prove anything else to get a felony murder charge other than that the underlying felony happened. And here's the brilliance of it. Every time you charge someone with aggravated assault in the state of Georgia, the maximum sentence is 20 years. Every time you charge someone with felony murder in the state of Georgia, the maximum sentence is 20 years. So if I can find four aggravated assault charges and a felony murder charge, and I can charge you with felony murder every single time I charge you for every single different ag assault. So when I charge you for the gun, and when I charge you for the truck, and when I drop felony murder on top of it, I can get you sentenced to somewhere between 60 and 120 years. I don't have to prove a murder. Why would you ever walk down this weird, windy road that could lead somewhere, but it's probably going to take you back to Trayvon and Zimmerman, when there's a very clear-cut path that gets you to the same place?
And I'm actually okay with that. And which is why I listed them, because we can't just go for one charge, which is typically what's done, and some BS underlining charge that doesn't have anything other than a 5-year minimum. But again, I would say based on my going to trial, there's certain things that you can do to get there, and which is why I started with aggravated assault. If I lose the murder charge, I'm still cool with that, which is why I put in malice murder and felony murder, because all the same requirements are being met. If I got a plea bargain for something, yeah, I'll let the murder charge go, but the other ones don't. So I will give you that what you're saying, Brandon. I'm not in disagreement. I'm just saying, based on my professional opinion, I believe I could prove murder because there's so many underlying facts that lead me to a point. But I would still not get rid of all the other charges, which is why I had them in an order. I didn't put murder first because I don't believe murder was the true predicate that I could prove easily.
And I think that's the difference between this case and the Trayvon case, and that's where a lot of people and a lot of the misinformation comes from. Trayvon, they charged him in the Zimmerman case. They charged Zimmerman with murder, period.
Right.
That's it. So they
right. It's like when I tell them it's harder to prove a cop ever committed murder because they're supposed to have guns. The minute I pull you over and the tape is mine, if I shoot you, I can say whatever happened. Because I'm legally supposed to be there, it'll be hard to prove. No matter what you find, you have to prove something else. The aggravated assault or something else. As soon as they charge cops with murder, most time I just look at them and I start laughing, because without text messages or something else to say that I'm doing it, you're never going to get it. It makes people feel good that I'm being charged with it, but at the end of the day, nothing is going to happen.
So you don't think that's going to hold true for a former police officer?
Well, and that's part of it. Post is really specific in some of the things it says about us. And when I teach people, I tell them, Post says that when I'm out, let's just say I'm out with my wife and kids and we out eating, and I see you robbing the store. Post is a police officer standards and training. They make sure that you do what you're supposed to by their standards. Post says if I'm out with my family and something happens, I don't have to act as a police. What I do have to do is call 911 and become an evidence taker. But I don't have to stand up and say, police, stop, and get shot to defend this when I'm a citizen.
You said you don't have to.
Right. No, that's a post standard. So when an officer says I'm retired, I can, that means you're taking on that all your own, because I'm still supposed to make a wise decision. You know, hell, if you and your wife shooting and I hear automatic fire and all I got is a 9mm, I'm not supposed to go knocking on the door. I'm supposed to call for backup, which is why you have Department departmental policy say that anytime you run up on a felony incident, you are supposed to wait for backup. They will not back you for doing a felony stop alone, knowingly. If something happens, they're going to hang you out to dry, because that policy is there for your protection as well as theirs. So post is clear. I don't have to act in a law enforcement capacity, but I do have to call 911. I can't just see an accident on the street and keep driving because I'm late for work, because that was one of the cases that one of the officers actually went to jail for, because he was late for work and he was in uniform, and he's like, well, a cop drove by and they gave his information, and he's like, yeah, I was late for work. And it's like, but you didn't see when this guy was running over this other guy in the store, and they had a whole fight in the middle of Bankhead. Yeah, but I was late for work. And that's why I say I can speak on some of the things that have happened in Georgia, because I've seen them. When we get to other states, I have to stick strictly with whatever it is I read, because like I said, even with the killing of Durham Brown, we don't get too far off. They went to jail. Georgia is not as inconsistent with sending cops to jail as other states. That's why I don't like when Georgia people say it. We have a history of sending cops who have reasonable doubt. If Pac-Man and Reebok went to jail, but like I said, like Brandon said, I don't want to get too far off topic. But yeah, Brandon, I'm gonna agree with you with the ag assault, which is why I put it first. I just believe professionally I can prove murder. Go ahead, Bobby.
I don't think where you're going is getting off topic. Because
I didn't want to talk about other cases. I want to stick to Ahmaud.
But my point in that, and I think Brandy kind of touched on it, is that it's back to a systemic thing. So every cop that you can name in the state of Georgia that may have gone to jail for X, Y, or Z, I can name you 14 that got off, period, for doing foul stuff. Because it's systemic. Yeah, will they feed one to the lions every now and then? Of course they will. But when you get a case like this, here's the problem you're going to have with the case. And I know we said we wouldn't want to go, I'll be shocked if they, you're damn right I'll be shocked if they spend a day.
No, you won't, damn it.
I'll be shocked. And I'll tell you why. Because one, this has gone high profile now. So you're moving way past local into national politics.
Right.
This has become a political thing. DAs are going to start moving funny. Prosecuting attorneys are going to start moving funny. It's going to shape the landscape's going to switch on this, where you could have just had a couple of two yokel good old boys that was probably going to walk away from this. Now it's they're still going to walk.
No, you got bombed. That's what we laughing about.
My bad. But they're still going to walk. But it's going to be in the face of the nation now, and so I would not be shocked if the DA. I don't know this DA coming in. I know people who have talked about it. She's come out of Cobb County, I believe. But it would not shock me if she came with the malice murder or the highest charge, just because of what happened in the Trayvon case. Because I don't know what political deals are being made behind closed doors now.
Well, and one of the great things. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brandy.
I was going to say, I will say that one of the things that I have found in Cobb County, and I don't know this particular DA, and I'm the first person to say that as lay people, if you're not sitting in the room, you have no idea what you're talking about, and so maybe you should stop talking.
That's me.
But I will say that Cobb County has a history of overcharging and charging a lot. So I would be really surprised if the only thing she charged him with was malice murder. That's not the culture that they generally have there. So I would be surprised by that. I wouldn't. I don't want to say that I would be surprised that they get off. I just want to say I'd be surprised if they undercharged it or charged it incorrectly.
And do we need to take a break, Russ, so we can have a sidebar? Or are you good?
It's up to you guys. We're good either way.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, and again, what part of the problem is I appreciate the Bobbies, the Brandons, even the people who watching. I'm not ignoring y'all. There's just a lot going on. Is we have to put out good information so that people understand why they can't be emotional and understand why there are times Brandy has to say certain words, I have to say certain words. You say something, not correct you, because those matter. And when we start doing the whole process, the best thing that's going for us right now that we cannot lose sight of is it's an election year. Mm-hmm. When we give up that power, that's how we lose a lot, because we don't take things seriously. We're such creatures of the moment. And Don't shake your head at me, Bobby. I'm gonna come fight you. This is where I'm a sidetrack for a moment, and Roy can attest to this. When we first started, when they had a case with crooked officers or crooked police department, and I had to do my research. You in a town that's 80% black, but y'all keep voting for white people, and they say, well, we can't vote. Well, 50% of y'all are registered voters, but you guys are never voting. So we've been had this problem for over 20 years, but for 20 years, it's only 20% of y'all voting. So at some point, you have to take control. So when these things come out, what do I always say? When judges make bad decisions, we got to start calling them out like we call everybody else out, so that we can change that narrative. When the mayor won't appoint a police chief who's productive, we have to change that narrative. That's our first piece of power. And when we get people who come in and won't tell us the truth, me and Brandy don't always agree. Hell, me and you don't always agree. But when people tell us things that we don't agree with, but they have some substance to them, we have to look into it, as opposed to just wanting everybody to sit back and pat us on the back and say good job, and then we get screwed. And that's what these conversations are so hard, because everybody wants to talk about something. And as Brandon said, if you're just a layperson in the room, if you've never served on a jury, and I don't know how many people serve on jury instructions are so specific. And if you talk to people who've been on jury duties, they are grilled on letting their emotions go aside. You have to stick with this. And if you talk to them after the fact, they will tell you why they did or did not go with something. And most times it's because they were told they couldn't. Oh, I feel this is wrong, but based on what this says, I had to go this way. Even cops who lose cases because they talk inappropriately. If I'm looking for weapons on you, the minute I say search, Brandon's gonna ask me where is my warrant. As long as I'm frisking, there's nothing she can say. And we have to be so specific about those things, and we have to train people. We have to give them the knowledge so that they know we can't end systematic racism in our lifetime. Maybe in our grandkids, but we have to start the education process so that we can reclaim some of the power, so that we can talk, so that we do know what to do. I've been pulled over by cops, and I've always looked slightly suspicious. Cops don't like intelligent people. If you want to intimidate them, say something intelligent. And what, Rob, you knew, but I always tell people, when you get pulled over by a cop in Georgia, I ain't got nothing to do with nobody else, cut your camera on. There's nothing they can do. If they decide they want to smash this, still gonna go to your cloud. But if they're doing something wrong, they're gonna be intimidated. If they ain't doing nothing wrong, they don't care nothing about your camera, photo, filming, whatever it is they doing. This is a form of intimidation that bad cops don't like. Good cops, like I said, they just don't care. But we have to do a better job, and therefore we can start demanding that we start the steps to equal justice. Because we can't just sit back and always be upset and think ain't nothing good gonna happen. And at some point, we have to claim that. I mean, we was having this conversation earlier about it. At some point, we have to start the process. You shouldn't be scared for your kids to go outside. You shouldn't be scared for your sons to do something. We can't do things blindly and think it's going to change. We have to have systematic approaches to get to that change.
Now, that's something I will agree with.
Yeah.
What you just said is something I shook my head earlier at the political statement, and you probably know why. I am a firm believer that all politics is local. You're not going to see me on the thumping campaign going vote or die, or if you don't vote, you don't count. I'm not that dude. However, I do understand that if you're going to play the game, play the game.
Right.
Don't be in it, be in it. One of the reasons I actually did go back and make sure I was registered to vote was just because of what you said. I got tired of looking at people going to court and ain't nobody on the jury look like them. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, if I didn't care about nothing else, when that little black boy on that dope charge set up in Fulton County, I wanted him to look at me, and I wanted to go, yeah, I got you, bro. I might be that one voice,
right.
Because that's how the game gets played. Now, on the other side of that, when we're talking about a systemic approach, that's the problem. As speaking as the layperson in the room, that's the problem with this. Because, I appreciate you, Roy, that I don't have the inside conversations. I don't know what goes on behind this or that. What I do have is over 392 years of empirical evidence that says this system ain't going to give you what you're trying to get. So to continue to pour into a system that continues to show you and give you its ass to kiss is counterproductive to me. I don't comprehend it. I don't understand it. And for the average person, whether you're in Ferguson, Missouri, or whether you're in Brooklyn, New York, or whether you're in Los Angeles, California, or whether you're in Brunswick, Georgia, this is what keeps happening. So I don't want to say it like we're talking about this case or that case, and we want to stay on task, because the evidence is said every case we continue to look at, whether it's Tamir Rice, whether it's Trayvon, whether it's Oscar, it doesn't matter. It keeps coming back to the same thing, because it ain't the person, and it's not the attorney's fault. I'm not going to put this on the attorneys. It's a system that is designed to do exactly what it's doing to us. And until, like you just said, we get a system that begins to counter this system, we're going to continue to have these same conversations, continue these same marches, and continue writing these same hashtags for these little black kids that's getting dropped in the street.
So, Bobby,
why don't your kids do bad shit? Because you hold them accountable. And even though you say you don't blame attorneys, which is why I only work with a few, we have to, Bobby, because the one something, I did this for over 20 years. Brandy's a lawyer. Theoretically, I know more about the system. But she's at a higher education level. When she reaches out to me to ask me questions, and I can break down base things, and I can reach out to her and answer something about words of law that I don't get, we have to have these collaborations, and we have to have about people who mean us well, not just who look like us. You know, Bruce Harvey is well paid. He don't care nothing about us. He's about that dollar. But when he sees a mistake, black, white, or indifferent, he's capitalizing on it. We have to become better educated and more knowledgeable. And part of the reason, the dumbest reason ever I became a cop was because somebody bet me. But once I became a cop, I wanted to educate my people. So I stayed in. And, you know, we talk about having a seat at the table so we know some of what they're doing. So I hear certain things. I can come back and relay those things and say, hey, this is how this is happening. We're so in our own mind sometimes that we don't want to be part of the system, but we want to keep blaming it. We don't want to, as you said, we don't want to do jury duty. So how can you complain about something that's happening to us if you are actively avoiding it? What do we say? Either you with us or against us. So being neutral, if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. And we do have to push the bar for us to get better. And, you know, everything is not, most of the things ain't our fault. We have been oppressed, and some of us are slow to come up. But we have to, when people tell us they stand for us, we have to hold them to task. When I say something that y'all don't like, I don't mute y'all for saying what you don't like. I try to explain it so that you understand it. We've had conversations. You don't like everything I say, but sometimes they are what they are. And if we want to change the system, we have to know those. So now you can get with your group and say, hey, this is what's wrong with this. So how can we fix this? Because if we don't acknowledge those, how can we fix a leak if we just keep turning on the light switch? At some point, we got to call a plumber. The electrician can't fix the leak.
How long you been trying to change the system?
So, hey,
honestly, what'd you say? Brandy, what did you say?
I was just going to say, so on the one hand, I understand the idea of the system is broken and it wasn't created for us, so we should be trying to find a different system to work and to live in. Unfortunately, our reality is that this is where we are today. And unless you're planning to leave where you are today and go someplace where you can create your own utopian. Thank you, because that word was not working for me today. Utopian society where the system is created and designed specifically for you, then you have to figure out how to play and live in this system. Part of the problem is not in Brunswick that only 20% get out and vote. The biggest part of the problem in Brunswick is that the only people who are still eligible to vote are damn near 60 years old. They've made it so hard for them to get to the polls. They've made it so hard for them to be able to register, or Kemp in his infinite wisdom dumped them all in the last election, and they don't know how to get back on. So I think it's a point of having people that are going to be willing to proactively go to Brunswick and these small rural towns and help these people get back on the rolls and help these people get to the polls, as opposed to saying we all need to vote. Someone needs to be helping the people who cannot vote or can't get their vote. The other side of that also is there has to be some conversation about how do we start keeping our children out of this system, which is how they keep us out of their system. They keep us so far entrenched. And when I say they, I'm not even necessarily speaking in a racial space. I'm speaking in a class space. I'm speaking in a sexist space. I'm speaking in a racial space. I'm speaking in all of whomever is oppressing and putting you or your people in the position to find themselves consistently locked up from 10 years old.
Right.
where we begin to create felonies and create that pipeline that ensures that we no longer have people on this side of the fence who live our lives, who experience our experiences, who are able to actually go out and vote.
So I want to jump in and say something, because that's Brandy was kind of going where I wanted to go. I'm not sure if Brandy and DVP know this name. Bobby, you've probably heard this name, but Professor Dr. Kofi Cambone, a.k.a. Joseph Baldwin, used to be a professor down at Florida A&M University that I had. Yep. And in the early 90s, when we were in school there, one of the things that he talked about was that there are some realities, and Darren, I know you know this part about it. No system has ever been changed violently from the outside, because that's not where they go. And he told us in class, he said, this is where we are falling off as black people. We don't like to do, there are a lot of things that we don't feel, quote unquote, again, back with our feelings, that we should have to do to get equity in this system. We already know that they make it harder for us. We already know that our access is not what their access is. But he always said, one of the things that he continually drilled in us, he says, if you're going to change this system, you've got to learn everything you can about the system, and then you have to rise up through that system. And it was funny because at the time we were talking about Michael Jordan, and it's interesting looking at that conversation 20 years later, because what we thought Michael Jordan was going to be is actually what LeBron has become, as it relates to his impact to the effect of the game itself, and not just, the debate about who's the GOAT or whatever. We have to make sure that we have people who are in these positions, Bobby, just like you said, even if I'm just there so that I can give a different view in a courtroom. Like I said, we don't want to do jury duty. We don't want to get into that. We should have people in our communities. Our political leaders should be grooming people from middle school up when they're taking these civics classes to take over, because they're not going to be there forever, or they shouldn't be there forever. But we don't know the system. Just like everybody's talking about, we're going to get all back into stuff again. The big difference needs to be made in the charging of this this case. It has to be in the charging if you want to get justice. And if they do come out and try to prove that higher standard, guess what? Just like D said, the next part of that, when that part of the system fails us, now we have to go back to the other part, which is now let's look at who the DA is, look at who the judges are, and vote those people out. Don't just let it go away, because that's what's going to happen. We have to engage in the system.
And part of what he said, and this is one of the things I've been secretly trying to tell people on the low, is we got to look at how we educate our kids. I mean, we spend all this time with stupid algebra and trigonometry and all these things. Political science doesn't teach these things. If we start the education process just a little bit earlier and get them in on the legal system, have mock trials where they understand how juries are, let them go through that. We can once we understand the system, we can start adjusting our mentalities. But when have we truly been taught political science where they taught us how the legal system works? I mean, they'll tell us about they'll tell us about the different branches and all that, but when do we ever get to know the inner workings? They spend more time trying to teach us algebra and trigonometry and art, and this is one of the things with the education system. I can't expect you to do it, Bobby. Brandon can teach her kids some things about law because she's a lawyer. How do we get the masses? We have to start changing the education system. I mean, and not to get off target, but we arguing about Columbus Day. That shouldn't even be an argument. We need to talk about things that affect them on a regular basis. And whenever I try to get people out to start changing the school curriculum, everybody's there for a couple of hours, then they go their separate way. So some of these things will help us in the long run, because the more we understand, we're intelligent people. We are super intelligent, and we learn a lot when we're given information. Even those of us that don't want information, when people keep telling us stuff, we pick it up and we'll use it. We'll use it when it's time, when it comes back up. But if we never know it, how can you use it? And
hold on now, because earlier we talked about if you don't understand things from a layman's point of view, Brandy was so intelligent to tell us maybe we should just. Well, I'm not a layman on this one. I'm an educator, so let me clear up a few things for you. Number one, when we're talking about the educational system, and I'm going to quote one of the listeners here. Shout out to Aria Barnett, because she said it best. What perpetrator of a violent crime will take you to the hospital and pay your bill? We need to stop expecting them to fix us, feed us, and educate us. See, that's problem number one. I don't think we need a utopian society for us to be self-determined and to make our own rules, Brandy. What I think we need to do is to, again, institute our own system. You got to play the game. I understand that. Survival is the first rule of survival, self-preservation. So while we're in this thing that we're in, whatever it may be, yes, we are required and responsible, able to make a response to do the things proper to make sure that we benefit down the line. However, when we start talking about the education of our children, which is where it starts, the best education, and every educator, every pedagogy will show you the exact same thing. The best education of a child is when you begin to educate them about themselves first. Exactly. You don't have to worry about getting into law arguments or algebra or trig or literature arguments down the line. What will happen is when you begin to educate a black child with black teachers in a black curriculum, talking about black things from a black perspective, they automatically begin to flow in the way that you want them to flow. That's not my theory. That's been proven down the line. So the problem is, as we continue to talk about changing the curriculum and teaching certain things to these children, but you continue to send our children to the exact same schools that are run by the people that are going to lock them up the moment they come out of them, because that's the curriculum you're teaching them. It's backwards.
But that's why we have to
operate. The best time I've seen us operate in this country, if I spin it backwards, is in the 1920s and 1930s. This is when black people were wealthy. This is when black people families were solid. Marriages were well. People dressed good. We had businesses.
Solidarity.
We were opening schools. The unity was there. And guess what was happening? They were still lynching y'all niggas left and right. It ain't about that. This system is what it is. And Brandy, I will disagree with you on one thing. I don't think the system is broken. I think it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. And that's our problem. We keep trying to fix something that ain't broken.
Well, and that's why I said we have to infiltrate it. We have to go to the table. The way we
on the table.
But no, hear me out. The way we lost things. If we look at history, they came over here, befriended us, fed us, gave us weed, and got us drunk. But they learned how to farm. They learned how to do everything. If we want to know, when people want to, when all these kids want to be rappers and stuff, we do need more educators. Like I said, part of the reason I stayed with this job is because I learned I could learn something that I never knew. I knew what the streets told me, but now I'm sitting on the inside. So now I see a different world. I don't have to. Somebody asked a question earlier. You look at how many gangbangers are in the police department. They're in there for one reason, to promote their agenda. At some point, we have to adopt that mentality. We clap and we stand up every time there's a black police chief, every time there's a black sheriff, every time there's a black mayor, every time there's a black governor. But what are they changing? Not necessarily to better us, but to make our situation less worse.
But they're doing what you just said we need to do. They're inside the system, and it's
No.
The problem is that you had two different things happening. Okay, so do we need to be inside the system? Yes. Do we need to come together and become self-sustained? Yes, because you can't throw back to the 1920s and be like, hooray, black people, but they were still lynching us in a model that obviously wasn't sustainable because it did not sustain beyond or for long periods of time, because there were so many things happening outside of that model that caused issues within said model. You have to be able to do both. So the idea that you're going to put us all in one space and we're all going to eat with each other and bank with each other and love on each other as black people, and then no one's going to be inside the system, like that's not going, like you're going to find yourself in the same system where we're trying to figure it out. I think that when we're talking about this particular case, the Ahmaud Arbery case, what we're asking, what we're needing to do, and what I think how we ended up down this road is figuring out how do we get out the corrupt politicians? Because I think one of the biggest things that people had this issue with was, why would the DA's office say don't arrest these people, even after they had the video? Darren mentioned earlier, like the video is the thing. The video is what we all hinged on. So how do you not arrest someone when you have this video, when you can very clearly see what's going on? And then not only do you not arrest these people, but then you put out an op-ed which says, hey, listen, they're actually, here's a blueprint to how to get them off should they ever be arrested. There's got to be a way that we are holding these politicians and sheriffs and police officers and investigators and just the good old people who showed up on the side of the road and thought there was nothing wrong with a black man laying in the middle of the street dead, not that we should put these white guys in handcuffs, holding their feet to the fire. So I think that that's where we want to start. And one of the things that, for me, Darren, I was really shocked. In your experience, has there ever been a point where you've seen a district attorney's office opine publicly on an open investigation?
And that's the crazy thing. I don't have the most respect for our district attorney. I really don't. But what I can say from some of his officers, for some of the high profile stuff that we've done, they said specifically that they didn't want to be a part of it, so that they didn't taint the case, because had I done something illegal, criminal, immoral, they would have had to be witnesses to what I did. So I'm just so confused on how they even became a part of the whole scenario. The only time I can ever remember, the only time I can ever recall going to a DA for anything is when I had a problem with a sheriff, because I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything right. But I didn't give them names. I just gave them details. This is a high profile official. This is what's going on. Tell me, based on your experience, how I should do this. And the first question was, is this in our jurisdiction? Because they don't want to do it, and they don't want to know certain things, because then they become tainted. Even when the judge or the DA, whoever was, gave their recusal, they threw in an opinion, which is not the norm. And from my understanding, it ain't even legal.
Yeah.
But they threw that out there as a jab, which should have been caught. And as we're going through the whole Ahmaud thing, there should have been some call for prosecutorial miscarriage, whatever.
Yeah.
And that judge should be investigated. And this is where we have to, even like we did here, how we kind of veered off. We have to have pinpoint things so that we stay focused, because as much as I love you guys and your passion, what we start doing is, instead of being here, we start looking at the big picture. And unfortunately, we got to do one something at a time, and we don't realize that one something may take 3 to 5 years, because these guys aren't going to trial anytime soon, so that the fever can die down. That's how they want to get off. If they go to trial now, no matter, I don't see how there's any way around it, because we're in the middle of a political thing. The economy ain't going the way they wanted to go. This is not the right time to have this trial and everything else. So it'll be put off. But these are the things we have to take one case at a time and go there. And as we do this, we can all branch out and do other stuff. But look at how quickly we forgot about Flint, which has still got dirty ass water. And because we got caught up in other things, and we have to be more focused, because I think that's what they use against us, our multitasking.
So let me jump in on that, because I wanted to say something to what you were saying, because there's some things that we've got to find out. And you know what, maybe me and you can look into some of this, because if we're talking about, again, being engaged, you have to be engaged in the system in order to change it, even for whatever we want to do from a long-term process. And I had somewhere I was going to go, but I'm gonna stick with this. So we're going to have another discussion when we get into the 1920s and our history and all that kind of stuff, because I am a history and political science and African American studies major. So that takes me off the layperson thing for that thing. But what we've got to deal with this one, let's look at some of the details, or let's find out some of the first details. What is the population breakdown in, Brunswick County, or whatever the county is?
Brunswick is a primarily white town. It's a city.
I get the primarily, but I'm saying, what is we need to know the racial breakdown.
It's super white. It's close to Florida. It's where a lot of white people go prior to retirement. It's an old white town.
Okay,
it's Mayberry on speed.
So 70%. So we'll just throw a number out there saying 70. So you're saying upwards. So
yeah.
Okay, so listen. So here's the issue. Here is now what we have to do, and this is where my political science piece comes in. When you are a small group of the black people in this community, the next thing that you now have to do, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure every age eligible person who can vote is registered to vote. And now, as these different white folks start running against each other, they have to come to you, because at this point now, especially in that type of environment, the black community holds the key to who gets elected. Because you're going to put these two different white people up against it. There's very rarely are they going to put one candidate up. It's always going to be somebody that don't want to do such and such and somebody that does, that wants to do something else. So now we have to utilize, this is how we utilize our voting power. We have to start voting in blocks. Will that work in Atlanta? No, because you've got so many different types of black people here. But in Brunswick, Georgia, pretty much every black person in that county is probably marginalized. There may be a few of them. So you've got to get them engaged in the system. And like you said from the very beginning, you say, okay, you know what? We're going to vote for you. When we're voting for you because we want your support to change this law. We want to have this thing happen. And you've got to stay on those people, and you've got to hold them accountable to being able to do stuff. If they don't get engaged in that, like you said, it's 4 or 5 years. I mean, if they can drag this thing out as long as they want to, and then it'll be just like Flint. In another year, if this case isn't gone, I hate to say it, but the Ahmaud Arbery case will be Flint, Michigan, if we don't see something happen within a year.
And let me just say this, just because I know a couple people who work in Brunswick, and I hate this saying, but I can't deny its existence. Brunswick Negroes are not like Atlanta Negroes. They are happy to be down there. Brunswick, most of the blacks in Brunswick love their white people. And that's not be racist. They're just of a different mentality because of the way the town is set up. It's almost like going to Griffin and thinking you're gonna get us. Griffin is a different mentality, and sometimes that's what we have to accept as big city people. Our mindset is based on what we see here, and what they're seeing there is totally different. Which is why that case gotta leave. It can't be done in Brunswick. And these are the things that we have to fight with the education. Bobby can go down there with his education and changing the school system, and they're going to look at Bobby and say, hey, man, these people treat us good. Why we want to do all that you're saying? And we have to acknowledge those people. And we got to figure out a way to make – remember saying everybody who go to the hospital ain't going to be saved, but we got to look for justice on a bigger picture, which is why, the outrage – notice the outrage is coming from so many different places. Where the least amount of outrage we've seen is from Brunswick.
I will challenge a couple of things on that, and I know we're talking about staying on topic, and the reason I keep going into various spots of this thing, one, I'm a chess player, and so when we're talking chess and we're talking strategy and we're talking critical and analytical thinking, there is no grandmaster out here that one is not going to get that grandmaster title unless they've studied a lot of previous games. And I'm talking years and years back. So you have to bring other things into account strategically to understand where you're trying to get to. The other part of that, as we're talking about Ahmaud's case, the best quote I've seen on it, this is a social media quote, is they didn't give the arrest because they saw the video. They gave the arrest because we saw the video.
Right.
So that's misinformation. Okay, so part of what the reason I reached out to Darren is because there's so much misinformation, and that's misinformation. It didn't matter that we saw the tape. What mattered is that the tape was leaked and Glynn County was upset about it. It didn't matter if only one other person had seen it outside of Glynn County. Glynn County called the GBI not to investigate this case. Glynn County called the GBI to find out how the tape got out. Because Glynn County actually thought that they had a leak inside of their own office. So this did not...
Information. When I say that we saw it, I'm talking about that it got outside of the people who should have been looking at it. When it got outside of that little circle, that's a we thing that I'm talking about. Not because black people saw it, because it got outside of the good old boy network.
Okay, well then let's clarify that, because when you say when we saw it, then it sounds like, oh, black people got upset and now the GBI is involved, and that's not what happened at all. So, I just want to make sure that we're putting out good information.
I got you. On the other part of that, I'll also challenge that I don't know if a lot of people in Brunswick. I've been there a few times. It's a beautiful place. But what I have seen, from my perspective, because I've heard this same narrative when we talked about people in Mississippi during the 60s, when we talked about people in Alabama in the 80s and the 70s, are these backward country, but they're good, they're happy. Nah, that's not always the case. That might be the people you see on screen or the ones that get the media time. But when you look at the people, now I watched something on social media, somebody's Facebook Live the other day. It wasn't happy black people down there. It wasn't. They had a black minister who was brought to task to do what they normally do to calm the masses. Let's make sure we stay orderly. And they shouted him down and said, if you coming with this, you need to leave, because these people were upset. It wasn't a bunch of happy Negroes in the street. So we talk about watching the false narratives and false information. Let's make sure, if we see one person, I saw a statement from Aubrey's friend that said, oh, it's not a racial thing. Okay, so everybody took that and said, we got happy Negroes in Brunswick. Nah, that's one person. And it may be 2 or 6 people. But that town itself, from what I've been seeing, and we can probably have different perspectives on this, it ain't just a bunch of happy Negroes down there. There are people who are upset, people who have been upset, and they're telling the stories that this ain't new. Brunswick has a history of this. And this is coming from the people in Glenn County. This is coming from the people in Bainbridge. This is coming from the people in Brunswick. So let's make sure that if we're telling these stories about how our people are responding and reacting, that we are getting a full picture on it, and not just the okie dokie, yes, so that's Weezer good down here type Negro picture that gets painted. I don't buy that.
And I'm good with that. And that's why I say the guy who I talked to is from Decatur. He works down there. And I actually got a couple of people who I know down there. And I'm not saying they're okie dokes. I'm just saying they're not like we are. And a lot of, because I saw a couple people who, like, we're going to plan field trips. There's some agencies and individuals up here who went down there. And we don't want to get them confused with what was going on. But all I'm saying is, at some point, and this may be what it took to wake some of them up to realize that, even though they were being nice to you, what they were feeding you was still second and third hand. And we have to let that be what we're talking about. But we still have to want justice, period. And we have to go about it the right way. We have to make sure that these attorneys who go down there don't just go down there for the political payout. I've never been a Jesse Jackson fan. I've never been an Al Sharpton fan, because I know what they do when they go down there. So when they go down there and they're holding people to task, because this is who these people are looking up to. Because a lot of these times when you come down and say, okay, we got city people here to help us, they lack of knowledge. They put a lot of faith in them. And if they get screwed, then we all get screwed. And this is why I say education is so important. When Brandon reached out to me, one of the things we talk about was stopping misinformation. When you said something and a couple other people said something, and I said, I don't want to say anything because I need a little bit more information, because everything right now, from a legal perspective, just doesn't make sense. As a black man, am I mad? Yes. And do I just want to go out there and be a mad black man and don't have anything to back up what I'm saying? I see people, oh yeah, you see, they got their group, we gonna go in there, they trying to get a bond for him. And that's okay. He's gonna have the McMichaels are gonna have people who want them free because they believe what they heard. So when we're doing this, we have to, if nothing else, give proper education, even if it's something that we don't want to hear, so that we can defend it properly. Brandon will tell you as an attorney, some of the things that she needs more than anything else is she needs for her client to give her the best information that he has, so that she don't get blindsided. And if we go in with back information and then we get hit with something that we should have known, it just pushes the bar that much further back. Whereas if I already know it, I'm prepared for it. Hell, I'll even bring it up first so you can't sneak me with it. And this is where the education portion comes in. When we ask, well, you're going to charge with that. Why are you going to charge with that, and how can you prove that? These are the conversations, as Roy call them, uncomfortable conversations. When we do this, these are uncomfortable conversations because a lot of people want us to breathe fire and brimstone. Let's go burn Brunswick down. Let's go do this. That ain't going to solve nothing. We have to have a strategic approach, and we have to have a template so that every time this happens, we have a strategic approach so that we're going in it with a plan. And we got several roads to go through so that we don't end up with a single point of failure. When Brandy asks me a question, she's got her legal mind. I've got my law enforcement mind. Bobby, you got the layman's mind. We all need to sit back and bounce stuff. Roy got the political science. I hate that y'all said y'all went to college. Y'all was trying to show me up, and I ain't act like I heard that. But we have to come from, it's like we talk about multiple streams of income. We have to have multiple avenues of attack. And nobody's wrong. But if we put all our eggs in one basket, the minute, and I'm using Brandy because she's the attorney, the minute she hits a bump, the case is lost. But if she's got plan B, C, D, and E to go to when all this happens, we become a much stronger union because there's no one something that can shut us down, which is why the education is so important. The misinformation has got to be stopped. And we have to do that as a collective. I can't just do it. Because what did I tell you? There's sometimes I miss things because I'm thinking how cops think, and I can't mix the two because I don't want to confuse myself. And I need you, Bobby, to keep me on task. I need Brandon to keep me on task in case I'm behind on some law stuff that she's supposed to be updated on. I need Roy to give me his input, and we need to all be able to communicate freely, take feedback, take critical thinking, and make the thought process. We need to be playing chess the whole time. You can't have me on the team if I want to go out and play hopscotch. I'm not even playing checkers. I switched to a whole different game. So when we look at this, and Brandy broke down her thing, and like I say, me personally, I would still go for murder because I think my skills are that good. Brandy's saying this, so we got this. We agree on everything except one. So you know what we're going to do as a collective? We're going to drop it one because it ain't that big a deal. But we agree on everything else, and this is how we start attacking. So now we go through this. Brandon will say, okay, Roy, you look at the kidnap, you look at the aggravated assault. Bobby, you look at the malice murder. Let's come up with every reason they can say he didn't do it. That's why when I say, when people say he did this, okay, let's make him be a criminal. Let's just say he stole something just for shits and giggles. So if he stole something, does his crime meet what he did for stealing? Where's what he stole? If this is the narrative we're going to use, let's do these as opposed to trying to defend everything they say. When they say, okay, we'll give you that he was stealing. What did he steal and where is it? So now we put the onus back on them because Brandy can attest to this. Fellas, when we try to argue with a woman, what's the first thing they do? They bring up some shit we did 2 weeks ago, and we forget that they're in trouble. That's what the system does to us. Well, what about this? As Brandy said, what about the stuff he stole when he was 15? What the hell? He's 20-something now. We really talking about what he stole when he was 15? Okay, let's say he stole that when he was 15. His punishment is done. And we can't keep holding on to that because that's the deflection and redirection technique.
2 quick questions for you, D. One, when I'm playing chess, I'm never going to use the template of my opponent. He's got a template that he's using to make sure his win is successful. So using this template against him is counterproductive for me. But I wanted to ask Brandy a question. In effect to the attorneys you were talking about coming down, and there are a lot of attorneys I'm not a fan of. But there are a lot that I am a fan of. So, shout out to my brother, Maoli Davis, who's organizing one of those rides down to Brunswick this weekend. But Brandy, I won't even say your professional opinion, but I do have to ask you this because you are the attorney on board and you've been speaking very intelligently. I respect what you're saying.
Thank you.
And I'm getting a lot of questions about Benjamin Crump. Now, the reason I bring that name up is because every time Ben shows up, an acquittal happens. So people are asking me, oh, God, here come Uncle Ben again. That's their name they're using for him. That's not my name. So from a legal perspective, from an attorney's perspective, what's happening here when every time Benjamin Crump shows up, whether it's Trayvon, whether it's the brother up in New York that was Eric Garner, what's happening I guess it's from a civil viewpoint, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the two things don't necessarily touch each other. I think people misunderstand when they see Ben Crump on TV with the family and he says, I'm representing the family. I think it gives almost a feeling that he's somehow involved in this criminal process. He's somehow responsible for moving forward with trial strategies as charging the suspects. He's somehow responsible for anything to do with the criminal trial. And the truth of the matter is that he's not. He is there almost essentially as a wrongful death attorney. He's the voice because he's the voice of most of these victims, because when you're in that sort of emotional state, you want someone who's disconnected in a way to be able to speak for you, who can articulate your pain, who can articulate the things that you want to say, but you aren't maybe necessarily in the right state of mind. That's all Ben Crump has to do with the case. And when it's all said and done, if there is a wrongful death or some sort of civil responsibility, then he'll pick up from there and run from there. But he has nothing to do with any acquittals. So that's actually the first time I've ever heard that. I don't know why he has that sort of reputation attached to him. I don't know him personally. I do know people who know him, and from what I understand, he's a really good lawyer. Obviously, he's very well recognized. I don't know why he's attached in that way, because he has absolutely nothing to do with the criminal portion of the case. And then I also want to just reply back to you, I think, and then we're probably running out of time. As an attorney, when I set out to put together my case, the very first thing I want to know is, what is my opponent going to do? Because I think that we do, in fact, I personally, when I'm playing chess with the lives of my clients, I am using what my opponent's template is to guide myself. I want to know where they're going to step, because I want to be able to step there 2 times before them. I always want to know why they're thinking the way that they're thinking and how they got to that thought process. If I move left, how are they going to counter? There's no way for me to do that if I don't take the time to study them and to know them and to know the things that they're doing and how they move. So it changes, I guess, for different people, different strokes type thing. But I think that also goes back to coming from the inside out and figuring out how to fix all the things that are wrong in all of the systems. I know that I think it's almost 9 o'clock, so we're definitely over time. But no, I think that it's important that we keep our hands on the wheel. I know I wanted to talk to Darren about God, I just had a brain fart. I got distracted. Sorry, guys. I wanted to talk to you about the self-defense claims that the McMichaels are putting out there. And I also wanted to talk to you kind of about, I know a lot of people are calling for the DA and the sheriffs to be disbarred or disciplined or have criminal charges, how that works and how they're connected at this point to what's going forward in the case. So I think maybe we need to schedule some time and circle around back with each other.
And I put it there. Hey, for everybody who's here, we appreciate you. Post your questions, because what we're going to do is we're going to do a better job of having talking points, because there were some specific things, and I'm going to answer one before we leave about the whole disciplinary system, because somebody was like, they should get this. And I'm going to just say this right quick about the police firings, why you don't want police fired. Once they get fired, they can join another agency because the case is closed. Post is no longer investigating them, neither is the department. So we got to quit asking for them to be fired. Let them be put on administrative leave. I know y'all hate it because they on leave with pay. But that is the point, that they can be prosecuted and they can be put in their file so that they can't go get a job somewhere else. I know personally 4 officers who've done this, who should have been convicted, but they had a chance to leave the department without ever being duly charged. So there's nothing when you do the background check. There's nothing when you go to Post. There's nothing, because they quit. They were no longer cops. So Post doesn't care. And maybe that's one of the things we got to change. That Post still has to finish out their investigation, but the system as it stands now is there's nothing they can do. Michael theoretically doesn't have to worry anything about Post. The officers who are there, if you let them quit, if you suspend them or demote them, what if we change? And that was one of the things, like I say, we'll have follow-up points. I will make sure that they get the questions where actually they can see this. But we do need, I love the passion, and that's something that has been used against us, because we do start looking at a bigger picture, because it's hard for us to stay focused. Men are naturally problem solvers. There's a whole group of women, whether we want to admit it or not, they're problem solvers, and we're looking at a big picture as opposed to a small picture. Bobby plays chess, which looks at the big picture. And there's sometimes we have to look at a small picture and fix that small thing. And sometimes you do need to play checkers in certain scenarios to get something across first, because we can't look at 3 weeks down the road. We got to look at what's going on right now. There's a time for everything, and that's where we use each other. Bobby will be the strategist. Brandy's happening things in the moment. Darren is happening things. Make sure that when Brandy gets thrown a curveball, Darren is right there with some more information. And that's how we got to set up a layered system so that everybody can still perform at their optimum efficiency and we get going. So what we're gonna do, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna let Brandy and Bobby give you some information. If you're their friend, or if you're friends with Roy, shoot them some questions so that we can come back. We're gonna have an agenda. We're gonna put it up so that we can stay truly focused on what it is we want to do, and because we do need to keep this within an hour. So that we don't. So that will help us not to go off into whatever it is we're doing. I'm old, and go from there. Does that sound good to you guys?
Yeah, that works for me.
So yeah, and so we're gonna do ladies first, because yeah, sometimes we're still sexist, and it's the right thing to do. So we're gonna let Brandy tell you who she is, and I'm gonna just tell you right now, Brandy's an attorney. She's a super attorney, and she doesn't mind asking for help. She doesn't mind doing some research. She gives up her time. this is a rarity. When you find attorneys who are willing to take away time from their family to help you out, and I've seen Brandy doing stuff on holidays or running around, and I see her, or she'll say something. I just kind of log off because I'm trying to chill in my old age. Brandy's gonna put that best foot forward for you. So if you get in trouble, I'm gonna put her information up. Reach out to her. I can't tell you if she's gonna take your case, but I can tell you she's a good people. She's a good attorney. So Brandy, without further ado.
Sure. So thanks everyone for chiming in. I hope that you got something, or if it generates more questions, that we're able to answer them. My goal, even in reaching out in this, was simply to say, let's stop some of the spread of misinformation. Let's give some very clear definitions of how we end up here, not only in this case, but in a lot of other cases that are happening across the country. Let's talk, if we need to, about how the jury came to acquit Zimmerman in the Trayvon Martin case, because I think that what a lot of people don't realize is there's so much happening behind the scenes. There's so much information that if you're not in the jury pool, if you're not sitting in court during trial, if you aren't hearing the rules and the law that's being given to jurors when they're being sent back to deliberate, you're outraged. How could you possibly come to this conclusion? But the law is very specific. We work in semantics. We work in these little tiny spaces where we're trying to find holes and we're trying to work our way around. But I just think it's really important that everyone know that there's so much happening behind the scenes. So don't be so quick to burn down Brunswick. My name is Brandy Porter. My law firm is KDH Law. You can Google me, KDH Law, or Attorney Brandy Porter. I work in most of the Metro Atlanta, as well as south of the airport. I'm in Spalding and Griffin all the time, Newnan, Meriwether, all of those smaller counties where we don't have a huge population representation. You can find me on Instagram at KDH Law. I'm sorry, on Instagram at KDH Lawyer, on Facebook at KDH Law, and I'm online at www.thekdhlaw.com. So if you have questions, concerns, have a loved one that needs some help, find yourself unexpectedly in some trouble, please reach out and let me know. I'm happy to help.
And her information will be posted. I posted it already, but we'll post it again. Next, I want to introduce Bobby. And Bobby's, I'm gonna call Bobby a friend, even though he liked to harass me and throw the fact that he went to college and I didn't. But he told me he got a background in education. So ask questions. If you want to learn something, ask him. I mean, I've tagged him for certain things. He'll tag me for certain things when we got questions. You may not always like the answer, but he's gonna give it to you as best he understands it, and he's gonna give it to you from not only his heart but his head. So he's gonna tell you things, and if you don't like them, then sometimes you got to be careful of the questions you ask. Bobby, do your thing.
First of all, I appreciate the opportunity, man. I enjoy being here with everybody. Good to see you again, Roy. Pleasure meeting you, Brandy. It was a wonderful conversation. I know I don't come in with the mindset that we're going to get all the answers and we're going to have everything down. We got 2 hours to handle a 400-year problem. So just the fact that we got the platform to be able to talk and get some of this stuff out and kill some of this misinformation, I think that's important. I'm excited about Black people. That's me, period. If you find Black people, Black children, Black women, Black men, that's where you're going to find me. I'm unapologetically in love with my people. Yeah, we got some issues, and yeah, we got some things we got to fix, but I'm going to be on the side of us every time until I'm given a reason not to be, and I haven't found that reason yet. So again, if you want to catch up with me, you can find me on social media under Bobby Jackson anywhere. Generally, you're going to see a picture with a wolf on it, or you'll see my picture, one of the two. Certainly, for those who have youth in the community, my wife being the founder of TSK Prep, our African-centered high school. So for those who are between 9th and 12th grade, this is what we're here for. We are here to educate our children in a safe environment, in a safe space where they can be unapologetically Black children and not have to suffer because of that. So tskprep.org is our website there. For those who are interested on the chess side of the board, you can find me at notgchess.com. That's the name of the game, Chess in Real Life. So I will continue to strategize. I'll continue to build with my people. I appreciate everybody who's been commenting. Area, Lerone, my man. Good to see everybody on there. So look forward to doing this again. Appreciate you.
And of course, I'm gonna let my super producer introduce themselves because he's the one who promotes these uncomfortable conversations, and we're gonna have them. And I'm gonna make a pledge. I'm gonna make a pledge for everybody right now because I think I'm the oldest. We'll continue with this, even if we just do it like once a month, once a quarter, because we won't do what we normally do. We won't let this just go away. So until there is some form of justice, this is one of the things that we will continue to do and try to keep up with facts as we find them out. But there will be a point when the facts will start coming in slower and slower, which is when we'll become interested in something else. But this group I got here, like I said, this was something that was important to them and it's important to me. So like I said, we may not give you what you want every day, but we'll follow this one through. They already committed, so I got their names and I got them on tape. So, Roy, tell them about you and my JBN and how you're gonna change the world.
Well, thank you for that, sir. As D said, we are the Jericho Broadcast Networks, and I mean, Bobby just used the term that we like to say. I tell people every day whenever I talk about our company is that we are unapologetically a black network. Our content, our stuff, everything that we do is derived with the purpose of strengthening and making the black community stronger and making us better. Darren talked about my hashtag. One of the hashtags that I use is change the world. You can probably Google stuff, or not Google, but you can search stuff on Facebook. If you search that hashtag change the world, you'll probably see literally thousands of messages and stuff from me. And our goal is to do that by changing the way that we see ourselves. Because once we see ourselves differently, we will start acting differently, which will then in turn make everyone else respect us and treat us in a different manner. And it's interesting. I had a chance. I'm not going to take a lot of time. Just want to say this real quick with LeRon and some of the things that he says. And we're friends now on Facebook. And I followed the brother. And this is one of the challenges that we had. And I did a paper area. This is interesting, just thinking about your daughter. One of the papers that I had to do while I was in school, I talked about the fact of how systemically they have always chosen two different leaders for black America. And they were always polar opposites in some reason. That is still something to this day that we fight against. And Darren talked about it. That we don't have to agree with everything that somebody is saying to be able to work together. And so what we've got to start doing is we've got to start understanding that the first battle that we have to fight, the one that none of us have a choice in, is being a black person, being a black man, being a black woman. There are some things that are intrinsic to that. And so we want to be that voice that's going to make that stuff happen. And like D said, I know the parts of it that we need to play. We won't let what happened in Flint happen in Brunswick. That is not going to go away. It is not going to run its 3 normal news cycles and then disappear from our memory, because that's what normally happens. Is they give you what they call 3 media cycles, which is usually about 3 months, and then the story changes and it's gone. We're going to keep these informations out. We're going to continue to have these kinds of discussions, and myjbn.com. I'll actually put our thing in there again. If you want to help support us, we're trying to do it. I told D and I talked about it. I've turned down money from major corporations in the past because they told me that, well, as long as you stuck to just sports, we'll advertise, but we don't want you doing any news. I literally had that conversation with people from 2 Fortune 500 companies, one that's headquartered here in Atlanta, that everybody will know. So, they don't want us informed, and I refuse to let them dictate what we tell our people. That's the whole purpose of who we are and what we're about. So, there are different options. If you've got something that you want to talk about, get with us and, let us know. We can put shows together. This is just how we're handling things in the quarantine sense. We're going to be back in the studio within the next couple of weeks doing different shows and things of that nature. And we're excited about where we're going. So, thank you, D, for coming back, and we're getting ready to get at it, man. We're gonna change the world. That's what it's gonna be.
And I'm DVP, and let me just say this: sometimes y'all don't like what I say, but sometimes, and I told Bobby and a couple other people, sometimes I say it just to get conversation started. I'll say things and then I'll just back off, because there's sometimes we need to have uncomfortable conversations. There are times we need to recognize our weaknesses and our ignorance and just improve upon them. Don't get offended. Don't get defensive. You know, Bobby said a couple times he was just a layperson. There are things he doesn't know. But you know what? He goes out to be educated. There are things I don't know. I have to go to somebody else. I can't continuously think. You know, that the saying is, it's not practice that makes perfect, it's perfect practice. So if you only train yourself in bad information over and over again, you think it's right. You have to go out and get it and not be afraid when people tell you something that's different. I'm going to use Brandy in closing. We could have sat here and argued back and forth about who was right and who was wrong. I'm willing to give that one. That's not a big deal. We're on the same path. We're just taking two different routes. Remember, I told you, we need to have multiple streams of attack, like we need to have multiple streams of income, which is specifically why I reached out to Bobby, because no way is always the right way. We need to have multiple ways, multiple heads who think differently, but have the same common goal. So what we're going to do here, you know, y'all know how the show goes. There's some serious shows, but there's some playful shows. There's some sex. There's some of everything. But the goal is always to educate, to give you a different way of thinking. You may not like it, but sometimes think that people have been through different experiences, so their vision is slightly different. And we have to accept that. We have to accept that as the natural way things go. We don't all have to see exactly the same thing. But what we do have to do is want better for each other. The more we look out for each other, the more we can demand that everybody else look out for us. We can't keep putting each other down. I call Bobby a name because he doesn't agree my way. I call Brandy a name. We've got to stop that process and move forward and make it better. If somebody's saying something that you don't like, look it up and see if it's true. If it ain't, post a link. If it is, just say thank you for educating me. It's okay. I promise you'll get over it and you'll become a better person. So we'll do this. I'm going to set up with these guys. We're going to go through. We're going to look through and they'll answer your questions as they need. I see Bobby's posting links. I already posted Brandy's link for her law firm. So we're going to go through this and we're going to plan for a bigger and better show. I would say, 2 to 3 weeks. Give us time. This took a long time. It was supposed to only be an hour, but we got involved in it, which is a good thing. But that's it.
I don't know why you. Let me jump in. I don't know why you constantly say this thing was going to be an hour. I knew that wasn't going to happen.
Cause my Geritol wore off at 8:41. I'm old. ARP got rules against me being up this late, Roy.
You're funny.
I'm suing everybody involved, Brandy. Can you be my lawyer?
Probably not for that one. I'm one of the people involved.
Smart move.
We'll be back with some of the.
So you're accusing yourself as my lawyer?
Absolutely.
You know what? I'm defriending everybody. All right, people. I'm glad y'all liked it. Roy, you always got Ariel saying she want to do something. If you have a product that you want to advertise, let us know. If you got a commercial or something, reach out to Roy and go through my JBN. Like I say, for those of you that know Brandy, that know Bobby, that know Roy, if y'all got questions that y'all didn't post, reach out to them. Reach out to me. Put it in the inbox, and we'll be ready. We're gonna have an agenda next time we come, so that we stay a little bit more focused. But you can't stop passionate people from doing what passionate people do.
And Bobby, we gonna have that. Bobby, me and you need to get together because we need to plan that historical context and education. Because see, there's so much about that 1920s to the 1940s period, or really 1900 to the 1940s, that most black people don't understand. And it's so much about that, and if we knew more, we would see how we could better work this situation. But I'm gonna let D finish up because I know he got to do his little thing, and then we're gonna get into that later.
All right, so we're gonna let y'all go. Y'all know what it is. Peace, popcorn, and chicken grease. You three terrorists, y'all stay so we can finish up some things. Roy, do me a favor. Can you play the yellow pane video so we get the voting thing and close us out with that? You got that?
No, I don't have it up now. I haven't.
Okay.
I'll download it though next time, so I'll have it for you for the rest of the year. So.
All right, we'll close us out with Brandy's page so they'll know where to go to. And again, publicly, let me just say this. I appreciate you guys, and even when we don't agree on the same things, it's always a great conversation, and I always feel a little bit smart. Even if Roy make me sleepy, I still feel sleepy smart.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, and let's be clear. This was Brandy's idea. Bobby got me looking at the case because he sent me something. Brandy reached out and said, "Hey, we need to discuss this from your perspective, from my perspective." So hey, I can't even take credit for things that ain't mine. I'm just here. I made Roy get up, give up his hot date, And I ain't had a hot date. I'm on quarantine.
What hot date?
So thank you guys for making me, making me get out of my retired rut. All right.
Hey,
So
hey,
like I
look.
said, y'all stay. Roy, take us home.
All right, I will do that. But look, man, I'm still trying on the look. You can't be telling people I got no hot dates other than people. Hey, look, leave that alone.
Oh, well, he would have had a hot date if we went on quarantine. So right now he's available, but he can't go nowhere. He on lockdown like the rest of us.
Let me come back.
Eventually, but we don't have any details about that. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay.